They told her to let him die. But that night, Nurse Claire Williams refused. Rain hammered against the windows of St. Clair's Hospital, the kind of rain that seemed to wash the world clean, except the things that lived in people's hearts. Inside the emergency ward, machines beeped in rhythm with the fragile sound of life. Nurses rushed between beds, voices low but urgent. Among them was Claire, calm, focused, and steady. For 8 years, she had worked in those halls, comforting strangers, holding trembling hands, and believing one simple truth, that every life was worth saving. But sometimes doing the right thing can cost you everything. It was a little past midnight when the ambulance doors burst open. 2 paramedics shouted over the storm. Gunshot wound. Male 34. Massive blood loss. Claire moved on instinct, gloves on, for ready, adrenaline flooding her veins. Then she froze. The man on the stretcher wore an orange jumpsuit. His wrists were chained, his ankles shackled. Behind him stood 2 armed officers, faces like stone. The tag on his wrist read Marcus Dean. One of the officers barked. He's a convicted felon. Death row. You touch him when we say so. But Claire wasn't looking at the uniform or the chains. She was looking at his face, pale, lips trembling, his chest barely moving. She saw not a prisoner, but a man dying. The doctor hesitated, whispering to the officers. He was shot while trying to escape transport. We don't treat without authorization. Claire's heart pounded. He's bleeding out, she said quietly. He won't make it 10 more minutes. The officer's voice was cold. That's not our problem. Then a sound, a long, steady tone from the monitor, his heartbeat fading. Claire stared at the screen. One decision, that's all it would take. And in that moment, she stopped thinking about rules, about authority, about consequences. She grabbed the defibrillator paddles, charging 300 joules. Claire, what are you doing? Another nurse cried. Saving a life, she whispered. Electricity ripped through the air. Marcus's body jolted. Nothing. She hit it again. Then a miracle. Beep, beep, beep. A heartbeat. Faint but alive. Claire exhaled, trembling. He's stable. But the officers were furious. You had no authority to touch him. Claire met their anger with quiet resolve. You brought him here for help. That's what I gave. And just like that, her life began to unravel. By sunrise, she was summoned to the director's office. The room was cold, sterile like judgment itself. Claire, the director said flatly, you defied hospital policy and interfered with a federal case. I saved a patient. You treated a murderer, he snapped. You've humiliated this hospital and endangered our reputation. Her voice cracked. If saving a man's life breaks your rules, then maybe your rules are broken. That afternoon, she was fired. No hearing, no defense, just a quiet signature on paper and a career destroyed. Outside, the media had already found her. Nurse fired for saving death row inmate. Some called her a hero. Most called her a fool. And through all the noise, Claire sat alone in her tiny apartment, staring at the rain outside. She whispered to herself, maybe I shouldn't have done it. Maybe they were right. But deep down, she knew, mercy isn't something you ask permission to give. 3 days later, something strange happened. A young intern at the hospital, Dr. Ethan Lee, couldn't shake the details of the case. He reviewed the prisoner's medical report and found something wrong. The bullet wounds didn't match the story. Marcus hadn't been shot from the front, as if escaping. He was shot from the side, close range, as if restrained. Ethan dug deeper, and what he found changed everything. Marcus Dean wasn't a killer. He had been a whistleblower, a social worker who exposed corruption inside a private prison network. He had proof of abuse, torture, and stolen government funds. Days later, he was framed for murder, and the system that was supposed to protect him silenced him instead. When Marcus finally woke up, the first face he saw was Claire's. Sitting quietly by his bedside, reading a worn-out Bible, he whispered, voice hoarse, "Why did you save me?" She smiled softly. "Because you were dying. They said I deserved to die." Claire shook her head. You don't get to decide who deserves life. That's not medicine. That's humanity. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. They'll destroy you for helping me. She whispered, they already tried. Word began to spread. A journalist named Grace Monroe picked up the story, and when she saw the footage of Claire shocking Marcus's heart back to life, she posted it. The clip went viral overnight. 2 million views. The world was divided. But then Grace and Ethan uncovered the evidence. Proof that Marcus had been framed, proof that he was shot to keep him silent. The truth burned through the lies like wildfire. Suddenly, the nurse who had been fired for compassion became the woman who saved an innocent man. When the hospital called for a hearing, cameras lined the walls. Claire stood before the board, calm but trembling. "Do you have anything to say before we finalize your termination?" the chairman asked. She took a breath. "I became a nurse because I believe every life matters. I didn't choose who came through those doors. I only chose to care. If that makes me guilty, then so be it." Silence filled the room. Then the doors opened. Marcus Dean walked in, weak but standing tall. "I have something to say," he said. He handed the board a folder, documents that proved his innocence, evidence of the cover-up. The director's face turned pale. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. And for the first time in months, Claire smiled. Days later, the headlines changed. Wrongfully convicted man cleared. Nurse rehired after saving innocent life. The hospital apologized publicly. The director resigned. When Claire walked back through those hospital doors, the staff stood in silence, then began to clap. Her friend Ethan smiled. "Told you heroes were scrubs." She shook her head. "I'm no hero. I'm just a nurse." Later that night, she found Marcus sitting in the hospital garden, free at last. He looked up at her. "You saved my life." She smiled gently. "No, Marcus, you reminded me why mine matters." Rain began to fall again, soft, quiet, cleansing, the same rain that once witnessed her courage. And as she looked up at the sky, Claire whispered, "Maybe mercy was never a mistake. Because sometimes the world doesn't need more heroes. It needs more humans, brave enough to care when no one else will."